to week 3. This week we're going to be talking about technology prototyping. Basically, anybody can make a prototype. What it comes down to is how much will do you have to do it. Now, at the beginning of this class, I asked you to fill out a survey. I just wanted to get a feel for what topics people are interested in and not interested in. And as it turns out, the top 2 that came out were harvesting and scaling. That's kind of ironic in a way, because harvesting is actually one of the first things you should be thinking about early on in your startup, because if somebody's going to invest money into your enterprise, they want to know how they're going to get their money out. And so if you don't know how you're going to get your own money out, then why should they invest in you? Scaling is another topic that actually, don't feel like you're alone. This is actually a big thing in TEM. And that's that a lot of students don't understand how their businesses are going to scale. One student said, I don't have any scaling issues. And I said, well, you're working on an app. So what's the difference between 10,000 users and 10 million users? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And so this is something that you need to look at. Now, this is interview week. If you recall from the earlier lectures, this class is about you coming up with your own personalized journey. You can work with other people in the class if you want to. You don't have to. This is about developing a business. This is not an academic exercise where I go make you talk to 50 people, which quite frankly I think is a waste of time. If it takes you 50 people, then talk to 50 people. But if you talk to 5 and hit those golden customers that can spur you to action, what the heck are you doing wasting your time talking about the 45 people who don't matter? Anyway, send me a message this week or next week of when you would like to talk. Now, one thing I talk a lot about, and everybody kind of looks at me like I'm crazy, but it's about conceptual thinking. It's about looking at the overall big picture. The greatest entrepreneurs are the ones who understood how to do this. This is actually what they teach the students at MIT, and they emphasize it more than anything else. I would love to teach this to the TEM students. The problem is I only get you for 3 classes. At MIT, they do it for 4 years. They pound it into you. But maybe I can give you a flavor. This is part of the reason why I'm having you read the book by Breva, because I just think he approaches it differently and how to really put it in perspective of what entrepreneurship is about. But anyway, in order to see the larger picture, and when I say it, people are saying, okay, well, that's just all pie in the sky. But maybe I could put in a little bit better perspective for you. Everything sits within something else. You sitting in your house is sitting in a neighborhood, which sits in a town, and so on and so forth. So, for example, if I have a window, that window sits in a spire. That spire is part of a building, and that building is part of a neighborhood. So, if you could look at the overall larger picture of how it functions, then the details naturally fall out. Here's an example, and I actually think this comes out of the book, but what is the big vision when the car industry started? Well, the big vision is, can we make this where everybody can hold a car? Where the first company, Olds, was selling cars for like $100,000 a piece. Now, how many people are going to be able to afford that? But the viewpoint of the average car builder was that what is it about selling cars? Well, you get a bunch of parts, you put the car together, and you sell it. And the attitude is, well, it's a car. If you build it, they're going to come. However, Henry Ford, who revolutionized the industry, again, take it a step further. If I'm selling it to someone, what is their biggest concern about the car? How the heck am I going to afford it? That even though the Model T drastically dropped the price down to $525, people were only making $1,500 a year. How many people have 1/3 of their income just lying around to buy a car? So Henry Ford's big innovation is he saw this, that people couldn't afford to buy a car. However, people could afford to pay $25 or $30 a month, and so he came up with the entire financing system. That was Henry Ford's big innovation. Plus, it was extremely lucrative. But that's what spurred on Ford past everybody else, because a Ford car. Now, of course, people copied it and all. But the point is that he came up with the innovation that got the car industry started. Ken Olsen was once in charge of the second biggest computer company in the world, the Digital Equipment Corporation, or DEC. Ken Olsen, MIT alum, his genius was he took a computer that took up an entire floor and figured out how to shrink it down to get it onto your desktop. And even though he was one of the pioneers in shrinking down computing, Ken Olsen's feeling was people don't want a computer in their home. Computer is a nerd's toy. Why on earth would you want it in your house? It's for, really smart computing people. On the other hand, a young whippersnapper named Steve Jobs came along, and his vision is, I want to put a computer in everybody's home. So how do you reconcile these two different viewpoints? Well, to begin with, what is a computer about? Well, you design it, you assemble it, you sell the product. And who are you selling the product to? Typically nerds. You understand how nerds work, you understand how nerds function. The thing about nerds is you don't have to focus much on education or do much in the way of tailoring the product, because they're nerds. They'll figure it out. They're smart people. Well, guess what? There's just only so many people you can appeal to people like this. This is actually why HP took off. One day, David Packard figured out, something, or maybe it was Bill Hewlett. We're not going to make a lot of money just selling toys to nerds. And that's what the HP did. They made the best instrumentation devices in the world. But they realized that the way to make money is through commercial products. And that's why they got into inkjet printers. I mean, it costs them pennies for a few cc, and they're charging you $30. Wow, we can make a lot more money than this, than selling oscilloscopes. Anyway, so what Steve Jobs saw, that was the limiting factor in putting a computer in your home. He also realized that people were inherently afraid of technology, that they thought it was the domain for nerdy people, it was scary, it required a lot of education, and so Jobs saw both sides, so he was going to merge the liberal arts with technology. Not only that, but Jobs realized that in order to make it less scary, he had to simplify it. Say what you want about Apple products, but if you look at the history of them, they've always been designed to make a computer simpler. Then to link emotion to it, to make your products personalized. That Apple's always been the product of the rebels and the people who have been out there. And so by doing that, that resulted in the tsunami of cash. This is why Steve Jobs created a whole new industry for computing. Subsequently, the decision by Ken Olsen not to miniaturize and not to go after everyday people, to just focus on businesses, pretty much killed his company. And so it's actually pretty funny. Ken Olsen's biography was selling for like $14.99, and then the next year it was in the 99-cent cheap bin. Anyway, why do we introduce technology? And we talked about this in the last lecture. We want to improve on what's already out there. We want to fill in gaps. And that's if there's a change-generated need, technology can fill it. We want to solve pain. And it's the evolution of needs, that when new technology is created, our needs change and we want more. So the road so far is that we're going to continue talking about technology and you. The goal is for you to understand how you apply technology to problems. We know how technology is migrating from the last lecture, and we understand how to use it to come up with innovation. And now we need to actually how to practically apply it. How do we come up with a prototype? And that'll be continued in the next video.